Okay, we'll make a start. Hi everyone. Could I have a show of hands from the people who attended our session this morning on the Framing 101? I recognise them, great. So for those of you who didn't, just a quick introduction. So Alice and I work for a charity called Equally Ours, and we're an equality and human rights charity. And we lead a strategic communications programme which is essentially about how we communicate to create social change. And this morning we delivered a session, a Framing 101, so how we frame social issues, so how we do that to create change. And this afternoon session is all about developing that new story, so that new dominant story that we want the public to think about social care. So we start always with what the ultimate aim is for social care futures. So the ultimate aim is to change what social care is and does. And as public opinion influences and justifies policy, the way the public thinks and feels about social care is really crucial to achieving the ultimate aim. And we do this by changing the dominant story, so by reframing social care. So this is what we see as the framing challenge. It's a little bit wordy. Essentially, how do we get people to think about social care as caring about what people care about and not caring for people? So how do we get people to think about it as a means to an end, not an end in itself? So what we do is that we start by finding out what the public really does think and feel about social care. So some of the research that's been done to date, so we know a little bit about what the public currently think and feel about social care. And that was summarised in the Social Care Future report. But we really want to find out the beliefs that they have, the unhelpful attitudes they might have, the values that they hold, the language that is used to talk about social care, and the metaphors that are used as well to help people to understand what it's about. So we essentially need to dig very deep, so much more deeply than we have so far. And by doing that, we can work out what we need the public to think and feel. So which of the attitudes and beliefs that they currently hold are the biggest barrier and are therefore the key to change. So to change the story and ultimately to help change what social care is and does. So just to quickly summarise what we already know about what the public thinks and feels. Hopefully you will all be familiar with this, but I'll just run through it. So we know that they have a vague and hazy understanding of what social care is and does, and how and by whom it's provided and funded, and to whom. And it's more often thought about in relation to older people at the moment. They think it's about meeting the basic needs of vulnerable and helpless people, and they use well-intentioned but nonetheless marginalising terms. The term social care itself is largely unknown, but the public broadly understand what care is and what support and what they both mean. And we talked this morning a little bit about how unhelpful a term it is and whether we should be thinking about other terms. Due to crisis messaging, they see it as a poor system under stress. So low-skilled, poorly paid workers, underfunded, lots of abuse and lots of neglect. And that means that they are fatalistic about the government's ability and will to improve it and are switching off. So they think it's too big a problem, too expensive a problem to sort out, so people are sticking their heads in the sand and they just don't want to think about it, so it's fatalistic. There are some green shoots among the smouldering stumps around the role of community-led organisations and civil society. that we all have a role to play, but nonetheless, government does still have the greatest responsibility. So this provides really fertile ground for a new value-based narrative that foregrounds things like social responsibility, reciprocity, and equality. So the crisis messaging frequently uses metaphors, as I mentioned a moment ago, to paint a vivid picture of a system under pressure. So I'm going to put onto the screen some metaphors. Would anyone like to have a go and tell me what these are representing? Some we've already mentioned already. Hi? Ticking time bomb, that's it. That's often used in relation for demographic change as well. Strength? Yeah, so this one, I struggle with the photo for this one. If you can look at her face, that's the face.
Downward spiral.
Yeah, so this is, exactly, so this is around spiral, so spiralling costs of the system, and the top left one is really around strain and burden, so the weight of it. Sorry? Yeah, this is tsunami, exactly. And then what if we go in the top right? It's collapse, and so that's really around collapse and meltdown. Someone used the word meltdown earlier. So they're very, very powerful. And as we talked about this morning, metaphors are very highly visual, they're very vivid, and they allow us to convey complex information really, really simply. So they act as a shortcut to understanding something. And the reason we are interested in metaphors is because they really, really take root in culture to the point that we use them all the time when we don't know where we are. So really common ones are metaphors relating to things about water, so floods of people, for example, to the weather. So it's a very common way of visualizing things and a way of describing things. So I'm going to just hand over to Neil and Carmen, hi, who are going to talk a bit about some research looking at, well, you can say, Twitter.
That's my daughter. Should work, yes. Let's try. Okay, well, let me know now. Bear with us, like technical.
I have one.
Sorry about that, we just have a bit of a technical problem here. Well, I'm going just to talk to you about some research I've been doing with Elena. It's about how social care has been discussed during the general election campaign. Just a bit of context before I talk about this. We did some work last year on how social care is talked about in the UK press. And in this analysis, it becomes very evident that the UK press frames social care in a very negative way, using some metaphors, as I hope you can read it here, like in the middle is time bomb. It's many, many times referring to social care as a time bomb. It's a system in crisis, and that is very much due to the increasing demand and very lack of resources. And in this analysis, it became also very evident that the most affected people people, according to the newspapers, are older people and children. So with the elections, we then decided to look at how political parties talked about social care and how Twitter users talked about social care. So starting from the political parties, we focused on England, looking at the main parties, Labour, Conservatives and Lib Dems. We looked at the manifestos and the speeches when they launched the campaign and when they launched the manifestos. So, some of the key results here. First, the three parties proposed to provide extra funding for social care. We all know about that. The reasons why they would provide funding for social care were completely different. So we clearly see that Labour and the Lib Dems constantly stressed that the system is in crisis, and this crisis has been caused by the Conservatives. The Conservatives, of course, didn't mention crisis. What they say, this is a long-term problem, and that is due to increasing demand because population is living longer. This argument was also used by the Lib Dems. But the point here is, wherever you look, there is no positive vision of social care. So if you look at Labour, for example, they mentioned that there are 1 million older people without care in the UK. If you look at the Conservative manifesto, it's perhaps even worse. They are going to invest in it because they need to help those that cannot help themselves. Just some food for thought here. We looked at how the manifestos referred to the NHS. Have a look here. Labour says is one of their proudest achievement. The Conservatives say NHS represents the best of this country. Just for you to think of the difference. We also looked at some social groups. This graph here, it actually should be two different graphs. We just put it together to make it easier. The first group here, we grouped together references to people with physical impairment, learning disabilities, and or autism. So, no relation to age here. And you see that the mentions to this first group here were very prominent in the manifestos, especially in the Labour manifesto. When you look at the other groups relate to age, older people, children, and adults. What I want to call your attention here is to the reference to adult social alienation in the politicians' discourse. Twitter. So in the Twitter data, we use the software to collect tweeters. We collected 897 tweets using 897 tweets that have used one of those words, social care, free personal care, or the hashtags. And these are tweets posted between the 27th of October to the 14th of December. This was actually our first finding, perhaps a disappointing finding, because the number sounded to us as very, very low. Just to give you a point of reference, we also looked at Twitter users using the same method, same software, same time period that have used NHS or hashtag NHS. The number of tweets, original tweets, it's 20 times higher. We also looked at Brexit, hashtag Brexit, it's 40 times more. So out this graph,